Serena's heart pounded as she walked into the massive arena, the sound of her boots echoing off the cold, metallic floor. She had been in many dangerous situations, but this was different. This was a test. Not just any test, but the kind of test that could define her place in the galaxy. The arena was unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was huge, made up of steel and shining metal walls that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. High-tech holograms flickered in and out, creating different environments for the warriors to train in. The alien species from different planets filled the seats in the stands, watching silently. They had come from all over the galaxy to see this. A human, fighting in the most dangerous arena of them all. Serena was a soldier, trained in every kind of combat imaginable, but this was her first time in a foreign training facility. And she was about to face a being who was considered one of the best warriors in the galaxy, Keldar, an alien instructor from a species known for their strength and speed. Keldar had trained many warriors, some of whom were rumored to have never been defeated. Now, he would train Serena. But today, it wasn't about training. It was about proving herself. She had been selected for an exchange program between the Human Alliance and the Zoran Academy, a place where only the strongest and most skilled combatants survived. Keldar had been chosen to test her, and by the look on his face, Serena could tell he wasn't going to make it easy. Keldar was tall, towering over most of the beings in the room. His skin was a deep shade of purple, with glowing markings that ran down his arms and across his chest. His eyes were sharp and cold, studying Serena as if she were nothing more than a small insect beneath his boot. He stood with a plasma rifle in his hands, the weapon crackling with energy, ready to fire at a moment's notice. The alien instructor sneered, his lips curling into a smirk. "Steel won't stop plasma," he said in a low, gravelly voice. His words were sharp, and his tone was filled with arrogance. It wasn't just a challenge, it was a warning. Serena didn't flinch. She had heard it all before. People underestimated her because she was human, thinking that their advanced weapons and technology could easily overpower her. But she wasn't just any human. She was trained for this. She had fought in battles where no one thought she would survive, and yet, here she was, alive and standing tall. Her weapon, a simple sword, hung at her side. It was nothing special, just a piece of metal, forged with human hands. The aliens in the stands might laugh at it, but Serena knew better. A weapon was only as good as the person wielding it. She stepped forward, her boots thudding on the metal floor. The arena around her hummed with energy as the holograms flickered, changing the landscape. One moment it was a barren wasteland, the next, a jungle filled with thick trees. But no matter what the arena changed into, Serena's focus remained on Keldar. Keldar raised his plasma rifle, pointing it at her with deadly precision. "You will fail," he said. "The humans that came before you failed, and you will too." Serena didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Instead, she focused on her breath, slowing it down, steadying her nerves. This wasn't the first time she had faced someone who believed they were invincible. She had fought in many battles, against aliens, against machines, against overwhelming odds, and she had always come out on top. Keldar fired a shot. The plasma beam zipped toward her bright and fast. Serena didn't hesitate. With a quick sidestep, she dodged the shot, the energy beam sizzling past her. The heat of it brushed against her skin, but she didn't even flinch. Her training had taught her how to react quickly, how to read an enemy's movements, how to anticipate their next move. Keldar fired again, and again, the plasma beams streaking through the air. Serena continued to move, her feet light as she darted to the side, her eyes locked on Keldar. She could feel the sweat beginning to trickle down her back, but she ignored it. There was no room for doubt, no room for fear. She was a soldier, and soldiers didn't give up. Keldar's eyes narrowed. He seemed to be getting frustrated. Serena had expected this. Aliens often underestimated humans, thinking that their technology made them superior. But humans had something that technology couldn't replace: grit, the will to fight, to survive, no matter the odds. Keldar growled and advanced, his large body moving swiftly despite its size. He was fast, but Serena had trained for speed too. She didn't need to be stronger than him. She needed to be faster, smarter, and more adaptable. Keldar switched tactics. Instead of shooting from a distance, he closed the gap, moving in with blinding speed. His plasma rifle was now just a weapon to intimidate, not to kill. He was coming for her, ready for hand-to-hand combat. Serena didn't back down. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The blade of her sword gleamed in the dim light of the arena. It wasn't a sword designed for show. It wasn't made for elegance. It was made for one thing: combat. Keldar lunged, his massive hand reaching for her throat. But Serena was faster. She ducked under his grasp, swinging her sword in a clean arc. The blade connected with his arm, cutting through his skin and drawing a streak of glowing purple blood. Keldar hissed in pain, momentarily stunned. Serena didn't give him a chance to recover. She attacked again, her sword moving like lightning. The alien was strong, stronger than any human she had faced. But she was fast, she was human, and that meant she had something else: the ability to adapt in a fight. Keldar might have had the strength, but Serena had the edge of creativity. She didn't need to be the biggest or the strongest. She just needed to be the smartest. Keldar gritted his teeth and came at her again, his eyes burning with rage. Serena parried his attack, using his momentum against him, and then swung her sword once more. She was relentless, each strike more precise than the last. She could feel the sweat dripping from her face now, but it wasn't exhaustion she felt. It was focus, pure, unrelenting focus. And then, for a brief moment, she saw it. A crack in his defense, a small opening that Keldar hadn't seen, or perhaps had simply not expected from her. Without hesitation, Serena took it. She pushed forward, using every ounce of strength she had to force Keldar back. For a second, the entire arena fell silent. Even Keldar, the instructor who had never been beaten, was taken aback by the force of her attack. The silence in the arena was deafening. Serena stood, her sword held tightly in her hands, her body still as a statue. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, but her mind was sharp. She had landed the first strike on Keldar, something no one had expected. She had made her point. She was not to be underestimated. Keldar, however, did not seem fazed. His eyes flashed with anger, but there was something else there too: respect. He was no fool. He had seen the skill in Serena's movements, the way she had adapted to his attacks, but that didn't mean he was going to go easy on her. Without warning, he stepped back and raised his plasma rifle again. The weapon hummed to life, its energy crackling in the air. Serena's grip on her sword tightened. She had expected this. The plasma rifle was his most powerful weapon, and he wasn't going to let her get close again. Keldar aimed the rifle at her and fired. The shot was a burst of bright blue light, so fast that it seemed to tear through the air. Serena ducked to the side, narrowly avoiding the plasma blast. The heat from the shot sizzled past her ear, and she could feel the sharp sting of the air it cut through. The crowd of alien spectators let out a collective gasp, but Serena didn't even flinch. She had been in situations like this before. The key was not to panic. The key was to stay calm, stay focused. Keldar fired again, and again Serena moved. This time, she leapt into the air, her feet leaving the ground just as the plasma beam streaked past. She twisted in midair, landing lightly on the other side of Keldar, just out of his range. He grunted in frustration and fired again, but Serena was already moving. Her body was fluid, each movement a perfect balance of strength and agility. She was close now, closer than she had ever been. But Keldar wasn't finished. With a swift motion, Keldar dropped the plasma rifle, switching to his fists. He charged at her, his long limbs moving with surprising speed. Serena didn't hesitate. She met his charge with one of her own. Her sword flashed in the air, slicing toward his chest. Keldar blocked it with his forearm, the sound of metal scraping against his tough skin ringing out in the arena. Serena didn't let up. She spun her body, using the momentum to strike again, her sword aimed for his side. But Keldar was fast, and his reflexes were sharp. He twisted to the side, narrowly avoiding the blade, and countered with a punch aimed at her stomach. Serena saw it coming, but she didn't have time to block it. She ducked instead, letting the punch sail over her head. She had learned the hard way that she couldn't beat Keldar in strength. She had to outsmart him. She had to be faster, more unpredictable. Keldar, realizing that his strength alone wouldn't win this fight, began to fight with more strategy. He was calculating now, waiting for Serena to make a mistake. But Serena had made a choice long ago. She would never make that mistake. She darted to the side, her feet light on the ground, and swung her sword at his legs. The blade made contact with his thigh, leaving a deep gash. Keldar grunted, but he didn't slow down. Instead, he retaliated with a swift roundhouse kick aimed at her chest. Serena barely had time to react. She stumbled back, the force of the kick knocking the wind out of her. She gasped for air, her heart racing in her chest, but she didn't back down. She couldn't. This was the moment. This was the test. She could feel the weight of the sword in her hands, the familiar grip that had been with her through countless battles. It was her only weapon, her only chance. She could already hear the whispers of doubt from the aliens in the stands. They had thought she would fail. They had thought the human would be outmatched. But she was still here. She was still standing. Keldar was closing the distance again, his massive form moving toward her with lethal intent. But Serena was ready. She wasn't going to let him get the better of her this time. She took a deep breath, focusing all her energy into the next move. As Keldar lunged at her, Serena sidestepped to the left, her sword raised high. She was going to make this count. With all her strength, she swung the sword in a wide arc, aiming for Keldar's side. The blade connected with his armor, and sparks flew. Keldar growled in pain, but he quickly recovered, pushing her back with a powerful shove. Serena stumbled, but she didn't fall. She was determined. She wasn't going to give up now, not when she was so close. Keldar, breathing heavily now, stepped back. His expression had changed. He was no longer just an instructor. He was a warrior, a fighter who was now seeing his opponent in a new light. He had underestimated her, but he wasn't making that mistake again. Serena wiped the sweat from her brow, her muscles aching, her body sore. But she couldn't stop now. She had to keep going. She had to win. Keldar raised his hand, signaling the end of the round. The arena fell silent, the crowd waiting for his verdict. Serena stood, her sword still at the ready, her breathing steady. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, Keldar's voice broke the silence. "You've done well, human," he said, his voice rough but respectful. "Better than I expected." Serena didn't smile, but she did nod. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to prove that humans were capable of greatness, even in the face of impossible odds. "Let's finish this," she said quietly, her eyes locked on his. Keldar studied her for a moment, then lowered his head in acknowledgement. "Very well," he said. "The real fight begins now." The tension in the arena was palpable. Serena could feel every eye on her, every being in the stands waiting to see what would happen next. She could feel the weight of their expectations, but she pushed it all aside. It was just her and Keldar now, just the two of them, fighting for victory. Serena took a deep breath and stepped forward, her sword held firmly in her hands. This was her moment. This was her time. The air in the arena felt thicker now, heavier with tension. Serena could feel her pulse racing, the pounding of her heart syncing with the rhythm of her breath. She had faced many dangers in her life, but this was different. This was the moment that would define her, the moment where her skill, her determination, and her humanity would be put to the ultimate test. Keldar stepped back, his eyes narrowing as he sized her up. He had already underestimated her once, and now he was going to take her seriously. Serena could see it in his stance, the shift from arrogant confidence to cautious respect. He was no longer just an instructor. He was a warrior who recognized a worthy opponent when he saw one. For a brief moment, neither of them moved. The arena was dead silent, the only sound the faint hum of the energy shields protecting the audience. It felt like time had slowed down, as if the entire galaxy were watching, waiting for the next move. Keldar was the first to strike. He lunged forward, his long limbs moving like lightning. His fist swung toward Serena's face, aiming for a quick knockout. But Serena was ready. She dropped to the ground, sliding beneath his attack and using the momentum to roll back onto her feet. She was fast, faster than he had expected. Before Keldar could recover, she was already on the offensive. Her sword swung upward, a clean arc aimed at his midsection. Keldar tried to block it with his forearm, but Serena's blade was too quick. It made contact with his armor, sending a loud clang through the arena. Sparks flew, but the blade barely scratched the surface. Keldar growled, anger flashing in his eyes. He swung a massive kick toward Serena's ribs, a move meant to knock her off her feet. Serena barely managed to step back in time, the kick grazing her side. She winced from the impact, but she didn't lose her focus. Pain was something she had learned to push aside long ago. She was up against an opponent who had the strength of 1,000 soldiers. Keldar was tall and powerful, his species known for their unmatched physical strength. But Serena knew that strength wasn't everything. She had fought battles where she was outnumbered and outgunned, but she had always found a way to survive. Serena's eyes flicked to Keldar's movements, watching for any sign of weakness. She could see the way he was beginning to tire, the way his breath came in ragged gasps. The fight was taking its toll on him, just as it was on her. She wasn't as strong as he was, but she was faster. She was smarter. And that would make all the difference. She took a step forward, her sword raised high, and then brought it down in a powerful strike aimed at Keldar's shoulder. The blow was fast, precise, and sharp. Keldar didn't have time to react. The blade met his armor with a loud crack, and a burst of purple blood sprayed out from the wound. Keldar let out a roar of pain and stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. Serena didn't hesitate. She knew this was her moment, the chance to end the fight. She closed the distance between them in an instant, her sword flashing through the air. But Keldar was no fool. With a grunt, he reached for his energy blade, a weapon that hummed with raw power. He slashed at Serena with incredible speed, the blade slicing through the air like a lightning bolt. Serena barely had time to block. She raised her sword just in time to catch the blow, the force of the impact sending a shockwave through her body. The two blades locked together in a clash of metal, sparks flying as they struggled for dominance. Keldar's energy blade was powerful, but Serena was relentless. She pushed back with all her might, forcing him to step back, his energy blade faltering for just a moment. That was all she needed. With a swift motion, Serena swept her sword downward, aiming for his legs. Keldar tried to jump back, but the sword struck true. It caught him at the knee, a deep cut that sent him to the ground with a howl of pain. Serena didn't give him a chance to recover. She advanced on him, her sword raised high for the final strike. But Keldar wasn't done yet. In a desperate move, he grabbed a piece of debris from the ground, a chunk of rock that had been blasted loose in the earlier part of the fight, and hurled it at her with all his strength. The rock flew toward her at incredible speed, but Serena saw it coming. She sidestepped just in time, feeling the rush of air as it flew past her. Keldar wasn't going to make it easy for her, but Serena wasn't going to let him win. She was almost there, so close to victory. She could feel the weight of her sword in her hand, her grip steady. The crowd in the stands was on the edge of their seats, waiting for the final move. This was it. This was the moment where everything would change. Keldar tried to push himself up, his breathing heavy, his face twisted in pain and rage. He was struggling, his movements slower now. Serena could see it. He was weakening. The fight had taken everything out of him, just as it had taken everything out of her. With a determined look in her eyes, Serena took a deep breath and surged forward, her sword raised. She was faster than he was now. She was smarter. She was human. In one final decisive strike, Serena brought her sword down. The blade sliced through Keldar's remaining defenses, cutting deep into his side. He screamed in pain, but Serena didn't stop. She pushed the sword further, and with a final powerful thrust, the fight was over. Keldar fell to the ground, defeated. Serena stood over him, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion, her sword still in her hand. She had done it. She had won. Against all odds, she had defeated the greatest warrior in the arena. The silence in the arena stretched on for what felt like an eternity. And then, slowly, the crowd erupted into applause. The sound was deafening. The alien spectators who had once doubted her were now on their feet, clapping and cheering. Serena didn't smile. She didn't need to. She knew that this victory wasn't just for her. It was for all of humanity. She had shown them that humans were more than capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's finest warriors. She had proven that humans had the strength, the skill, and the heart to survive anything. Keldar lay on the ground, gasping for air, his face a mixture of pain and disbelief. He looked up at Serena, his eyes no longer filled with arrogance but with something else. Respect. Serena wiped the sweat from her brow, her sword still at her side. She didn't need his respect. She had earned the respect of the entire galaxy, and that was all that mattered. The arena was filled with noise now. The crowd had erupted into cheers, the roar of thousands of alien spectators echoing through the space. Serena stood over Keldar, her sword still in her hand, her chest rising and falling with every breath. She was exhausted, but she couldn't afford to relax yet. Keldar was not a typical opponent. She had seen his strength, his skills, and now the fight had turned in her favor. But she knew better than to let her guard down. Even now, as he lay defeated on the ground, she could feel his eyes on her, still burning with anger, still searching for a way to turn the tide in his favor. Keldar's breathing was labored, and his energy was beginning to fade. The cut on his side was deep, and blood continued to drip from the wound, staining the ground beneath him. He clenched his teeth, trying to push himself up, but his strength had left him. He was no longer the unshakable instructor he had been when the fight began. Serena's eyes stayed fixed on him, watching every movement. Her sword was still sharp, her body still steady. The fight wasn't over until Keldar acknowledged his defeat. Until then, she would wait. The crowd's cheers started to die down, and the arena became quiet again. The alien spectators were still on edge, waiting to see what would happen next. It wasn't just a fight between two warriors anymore. It was a battle for respect, for the understanding that humans were not to be underestimated. Keldar's hand trembled as he reached for the ground, trying to push himself up. Serena's gaze softened. She knew he wasn't done. Not yet. There was something in his eyes now, something more than anger. It was desperation. He wasn't ready to give up. He wasn't ready to admit defeat. With a low growl, Keldar managed to push himself onto his knees, his hand still pressed to the wound on his side. He looked up at Serena, his face a mask of pain, but his eyes burned with something else. "You think this is over?" he spat, his voice weak but defiant. "You think you've won?" Serena didn't answer right away. She simply stood there, her sword at her side, waiting. She knew how important this moment was. She had won the fight, But this was Keldar's moment to either accept it or try to turn things around. She had faced fighters who didn't know when to quit, who didn't know when to accept defeat. But Serena wasn't going to make that choice for him. He had to make it himself. Slowly, Keldar stood up, his body trembling with the effort. The cut on his side was deep, and he could barely hold himself up. Yet his pride refused to let him stay down. He gritted his teeth and swung his arm, as if trying to shake off the pain. "I will not be defeated by a human," he growled, his voice filled with a raw, unrelenting determination. Serena's heart skipped a beat. She had expected this. She had seen the same stubborn will in humans, in soldiers who refused to accept defeat no matter the cost. But Keldar was different. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for his honor, for his pride. He wasn't ready to admit that a human had bested him. He lunged at her with surprising speed, his remaining strength pushed to its limit. Serena's eyes widened for a fraction of a second as he closed the gap between them. She knew it was coming, but the suddenness of his movement still caught her off guard. Serena barely managed to sidestep, using her sword to parry his desperate attack. Keldar's fist missed her by inches, but the force of his movement pushed her back, making her stumble slightly. She had been expecting a slower, more deliberate move, not this last-ditch, all-out assault. Her breath came out in short gasps as she regained her footing. Keldar was no longer fighting like an instructor. He was fighting like a cornered animal, using everything he had left. It wasn't just strength anymore, it was survival. Keldar attacked again, his energy blade flashing through the air. Serena blocked the strike, but the power behind it was enough to make her arms shake. He was faster than before, more dangerous. The desperation in his eyes made him unpredictable, and that was what she had to watch out for. She couldn't let him land another hit. Serena took a step back, scanning his movements carefully. She needed to end this, but Keldar wasn't giving her the opening she needed. The more they fought, the more she could feel her own strength beginning to fade. She had to make the next move, or this fight could go on forever. With a sharp breath, Serena surged forward, using her remaining energy to launch an attack. Her sword came down in a swift, precise strike aimed at Keldar's exposed side. She knew she had to land a clean blow. If she hesitated, if she gave him even a second to recover, he would turn the fight in his favor. The sword connected with Keldar's armor with a loud clang, and Serena could feel the impact rattle through her body. For a brief moment, she thought she had missed. But then she saw it. The armor on his side had cracked. She had found her opening. Keldar grunted, stumbling back as the blade hit its mark. Serena didn't wait. She pressed forward, her sword raised high, ready to finish the fight. But just as she was about to strike, Keldar dropped to his knees, his head bowed in defeat. The fight left his eyes, replaced by something Serena hadn't expected. Resignation. I yield, Keldar said, his voice strained. "You have won!" For a moment, Serena stood frozen. She had expected a battle to the death, but instead, she was met with surrender. Keldar's pride, his anger, had finally been overcome by the reality of the fight. He was no longer the undefeated warrior. He was a defeated warrior. Serena's sword lowered slowly, the weight of the moment settling in. She had won, not just the fight, but the respect of the galaxy. But that didn't mean she could forget what it had taken to get here. Keldar, his face pale and sweaty from the pain, looked up at Serena with a mixture of awe and respect. You are truly a warrior," he said, his voice weak but sincere. "I did not expect this. I thought humans were weak." Serena nodded, her eyes meeting his. "We're not weak. We just fight differently." For a long moment, they stood there, the weight of the battle hanging between them. Keldar's surrender didn't make her feel victorious. It made her feel something deeper, something more humbling. She had proved her point, but it wasn't about winning the fight. It was about showing that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The crowd in the stands erupted into applause again, this time in a different tone. It wasn't just the cheers of spectators watching a thrilling battle. This time it was the applause of warriors, of beings who recognized strength when they saw it. Serena didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her actions spoke louder than any words ever could. She had proven that humans were a force to be reckoned with. And that was all that mattered. The arena was alive with sound now. The crowd was on its feet, cheering and applauding as Serena stood over Keldar. She could hear the excitement in their voices, the awe in their claps. But it didn't feel like a victory to her, not the kind most people expected. For Serena, this wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about something deeper. Keldar was kneeling before her, still breathing heavily, his body trembling with pain from the deep gash in his side. His pride had been shattered, but there was something else there too: respect. He was no longer the arrogant instructor who had underestimated her. Now he saw her as a warrior, a true fighter. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The silence in the arena felt strange after all the chaos of the battle. The other warriors who had been watching the fight seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Serena lowered her sword slowly, her arms aching from the effort of the fight. The adrenaline that had been keeping her going was beginning to fade, and she felt the weight of her exhaustion, but she didn't let it show. She stood tall, her eyes locked on Keldar. "I yield," Keldar said, his voice low but clear. He sounded defeated, but there was no anger in his words now, only acceptance. "You have won. I thought I was better than you, but I see now that I was wrong." Serena didn't respond at first. She simply watched him, her chest rising and falling with every breath. There was no need for words. The battle had spoken for itself. Keldar's expression softened, and he reached out with a trembling hand to touch the ground in front of him. "You have earned my respect, human. You have earned the respect of this arena. You fought with honor." Serena nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "I didn't fight for respect. I fought to prove that humans can stand toe-to-toe with anyone, that we can survive no matter the odds." Keldar's eyes flashed with something new. "You have proven that. You've proven it to everyone watching. I will not forget this." The crowd erupted again into applause. Serena could hear the alien warriors in the stands shouting her name, clapping in admiration. She stood there, her sword still in her hand, feeling the weight of their gaze on her. But this time she didn't feel nervous. She didn't feel fear. She felt pride. She had done what no human had ever done before. She had proven that humanity was not weak, that they were not to be underestimated. They might not have the advanced technology or the strength of other species, but they had something far more powerful: heart, willpower, and the courage to fight when everything seemed impossible. Keldar pushed himself to his feet, still holding his side, but with more dignity than Serena had expected. He bowed his head slightly, acknowledging her victory. "You have done something no one else could do," he said quietly. "You have shown me and everyone here what humanity is truly capable of. For that, you have my respect." Serena didn't smile, but she nodded again. She didn't need his respect. What mattered was the fact that humanity now had a place among the galaxy's greatest warriors. They had shown that they could survive, thrive, and fight against all odds. Keldar turned to the other alien spectators. "This human," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the arena, "has proven herself. She is not just a soldier, she is a warrior. She has earned the right to stand beside the greatest fighters in the galaxy." The alien spectators, who had once doubted her, now looked at her with new eyes. Some of them nodded in respect. Others stood clapping in admiration. Serena could feel the change in the air. She had come here as an outsider, a human soldier from a small planet that many of them had never even heard of. But now, she was something else. She was a symbol of what humanity could do. Keldar stepped back, his expression serious. You have earned your place here. But your journey is not over. This arena, this academy, is where the greatest warriors train. But the true test is yet to come. Serena raised an eyebrow, her sword still in hand, ready for whatever came next. What do you mean? Keldar's eyes glinted with challenge. There are still battles to fight. The galaxy is filled with threats. And if you want to be part of this academy, part of this galaxy's strongest warriors, you must continue to prove yourself. Your fight with me was just the beginning. Serena smiled to herself. She had already proven something today. She had proven that humans weren't weak, that they could fight just as hard as anyone else. And now the galaxy had seen that. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady and firm. I'll prove it again. And again. The crowd cheered again, even louder this time. Serena's heart swelled with pride. She had done what she set out to do. She had earned her place among the galaxy's greatest warriors. But this was only the beginning. She knew there would be more battles, more struggles ahead, but she was ready. She had always been ready. Keldar gave her a final nod of respect before turning to the other warriors in the arena. She is one of us now, he said. Let us see if she can prove it again. Serena stood tall, her sword in hand, her body aching, but her spirit unbroken. She had earned this moment. She had earned the right to call herself a warrior, and no one could take that from her. As she looked around the arena, Serena realized something. It wasn't just the respect of the galaxy that mattered, it was the respect of herself. She had fought for what she believed in, and she had won. And that was all that mattered. The applause continued to ring out, echoing in the arena. Serena didn't listen to the noise, though. She was focused on the future, on what was still to come. There were still many challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them. She had proven herself. Now it was time to show the galaxy just how strong humanity could be.